it be? For me, your man, Louie Tee. Welcome to the 2018 NFL Draft Wrap-Up Series, where your man Louie Tee aims to break down all 32 teams in the National Football League's 2018 NFL Draft by using our baseball grading scale: single, double, triple, home run. There are no strikeouts here in the Draft Wrap-Up Series, as we cannot tell how these players are going to pan out. I don't want to discount any of these young men before they get their chance in the National Football League. And so we'll get a score for each and every single player selected by X said team in the draft. We'll apply bonuses when necessary, add those points up, divide by the number of picks, which will then yield us an overall grade for that team's draft. We'll then move on to the next team in the series, picked by you. That's right, you, the viewer, are in total control, as this is the You Pick format. Simply be the first to leave a comment in the comment section of this and future videos in this series stating two things: the phrase next and the team you'd like to see next. An example would be Chicago next, Bears next. Speaking of which, we're talking the Bears in their 2018 NFL Draft. And I must say, GM Ryan Pace, he did it again. And I haven't always been the biggest fan of Ryan Pace and what he's done in Chicago. It seems like things have been going rather slow in Chicago over the years since Pace has taken over. But then again, when have things not gone slowly in Chicago? That being said, they're heading in the right direction. I wasn't a huge fan of the whole song and dance at the quarterback position last year. If you wanted Mitchell Trubisky, why didn't you just get him in the first place? But you didn't know how the draft was going to turn out. You didn't know you were going to love Mitchell Trubisky until you fell in love with Mitchell Trubisky. That being said, Mike Glennon was the odd man out. You did what you did. Glenn and Trubisky is the guy. You're moving forward with that. And so in order to find out just how good or how bad Mitchell Trubisky really is, you got to get him some weapons. That's what you've done in this offseason with some of the moves you made there with Taylor Gabriel and, of course, most notably, getting ex-Jacksonville Jaguars receiver Allen Robinson, and then adding tight end from Philadelphia as well in the mix. But then you added some more weaponry in the draft. Among other things, this defense is getting better. This is a really strong draft, one of the better ones we saw put together in 2018. The first three draft picks in this draft, I'd put them up against anybody else's first three draft picks, pound for pound, and see how it turns out. In any event, let's get into this draft and what the Bears were able to do in the 2018 NFL Draft. And we start with their first round selection, one of the best players in this draft. First pick, 8th overall, linebacker out of Georgia, Roquan Smith. So, look, I've already broken down Roquan Smith, so I'm not going to do so again here on this breakdown. But I will tell you, if you are looking for an extensive breakdown of what Roquan Smith brings to the table, check out my Draft Prospects 101 series on the Louie Tee Network. Just go to the playlist section. 2018 NFL Draft Prospects 101 series is what you should be looking for. And another one of the players in this draft you're going to find there as well. But I'll just quickly say this: Roquan Smith is a one-of-a-kind type of linebacker in this draft. His uncanny ability to move on the football field, get from point A to point B in a lightning quick speed, is probably unmatched in this draft. Maybe one linebacker comes to mind in Tremaine Edmonds, but for the most part, Roquan Smith's speed and his ability to make things happen is a big time plus for this Bears defense. You're adding in a playmaker, and now you're hoping from one Georgia Bulldog to another that defense can get going with a couple of guys from UGA spearheading that defensive attack. This guy is a game changer, and it was a hell of a first pick for this Chicago Bears defense. Not only can he get after the quarterback and stop the run, this guy's also exceptional, and maybe one of his biggest attributes in pass defense. In the first round, 8th overall selection, Georgia linebacker Roquan Smith for this Bears team is...
Hits one high! Hits it deep! It is out of here!
So we move on to the second round, where the Bears made two more impressive selections Second round, 39th overall selection, Iowa offensive lineman James Daniels is the selection. So you start with James Daniels, 6'3", 306 pounds, out of Iowa. I've always said that if you get an Iowa offensive lineman, you're getting yourself a technician and a damn good offensive lineman that's been coached very, very well. That doesn't change here. In fact, with James Daniels, not only are you getting a well-coached, well-oiled machine on the offensive line, you're getting an extremely gifted athlete. Now, also with Iowa offensive linemen, at times, this isn't always the case, they can be a little light in the pants because they move so well. That is the case with James Daniels. If there's one drawback to what he brings to the table, but I'm here to tell you, this guy is a puppy. He's a baby. He's 20 years old. He'll be just turning 21 into like week 2 of the season. He's so young. 34-inch arms to go with that 6'3", 306-pound frame. 21 reps of 2 1/4. I love this selection because the argument was, well, is he a center? Is he a guard? Well, he can do both. And the fact that you have a center already in place in Cody Whitehair that hasn't missed a start over the last 2 years, one of the few guys you can actually say along that Bears offensive line that hasn't missed a start in the last 2 years, he's entrenched at the center position. If it's not broken, don't fix it. Now you have an issue over at the guard position now that Josh Sitton is out. And so that's where you plug this guy, and I think he's going to make a tremendous guard at the next level. And here's why. Let's get into some of his pros. Measurables, as I said, 6'3", 306. Can he be a little bit bigger or at worst a little bit stronger? Absolutely. We'll talk about that a little bit later on. But athleticism, he's what you call an easy mover, okay? This guy moves with the grace of a tight end at the guard position or a center in his case, but he's played both center and guard throughout his career. His ability to get to reach blocks, and I put in my notes, able to get to reach blocks and turn his ass. His ability to not only, it's a win when you can get an offensive lineman that can get to a reach block. To just get there is one thing. He not only gets to the reach block, he actually turns his ass and seals and walls off that defender. I'm like, are you kidding me? Do you know how much athleticism it takes for a guy to not only win on a reach block, but to be able to actually get there and turn his ass? I just want a guy to get in the way on a reach block. This guy's getting not only to that defender, but also getting into that defender, turning his ass and sealing him off out of the play totally. It is so fun to watch. His technique, again, you get him from Iowa, you expect this. You don't get this from an Iowa offensive lineman, and you feel like something's wrong. Great hand placement. You don't see the hands going up into the face. They're not outside of the pads. He's not getting holding penalties. Hand placement is outstanding. Footwork, as I just mentioned, off the charts. Balance is really good. This guy isn't on the ground unless he wants to be. Redirect for a big guy. He can change directions ever so smoothly and effortlessly. Toughness. I don't worry about this guy in the trenches. He gets it done. Is he the most stout at times? No, but is it from a lack of toughness and grit? Nope, not at all. Pass blocking ability is good, not great like his run blocking is. I think his run blocking is slightly above his pass blocking at this point. Both of them are good enough to step right in and start and be really good right away. Finish as a blocker. And when you say finish, sometimes when you hear the word finish, the first thing that comes to mind is being nasty and having a nasty disposition and a nasty streak. Maybe taking a guy and driving him 2 yards into the sidelines, or maybe dumping a guy on the ground, pancaking him and rubbing his face into the turf a bit. Maybe being a little physical and extra after the whistle is sounded. That's what we think of when we think of finish. But how about finishing sometimes just meaning sustaining your block? How about getting on a guy and riding his ass, or just getting on a guy and not allowing him to disengage and get to the ball carrier. There's something to be said about just finishing a block and staying engaged with the guy that you initiate contact with. James Daniels does that as well as anyone I've seen in this draft to this point. Awareness and spatial awareness when he's out in space as a puller or getting to the second level after getting from that double team and climbing up to the second level. Very good awareness of who he needs to get in contact next. A great example of that, and I put this down on double teams, but this could double as spatial awareness, just awareness in general. But climbing to that second level, I put beautiful effort on kick out block on go ahead score versus Penn State late. So their running back, Akrum Wadley, scores a touchdown that late in that ball game gives them a lead. What seems like it's going to be the game-winning score. Penn State ultimately would break their hearts on the final play of the game with a touchdown pass. But he had a kick-out block. They double-team on the defensive tackle. He climbs to the second level, gets just a piece of the line. I'm talking about just the slightest piece of the linebacker, but it's just enough to give Wadley enough space to get to the outside and win the foot race to the end zone. It's that kind of block that separates James Daniels from a lot of these guys in this draft as interior offensive linemen. Looking for work. And as a guard, you won't have to do this as often because generally you'll have someone lined up over you, so you'll have an assignment on most snaps. But depending on what kind of alignment you're in front of, if it's a 3-4, you may not have a guy directly over you. You may not have anyone to block necessarily assigned to you. You got to look and find work. James Daniels has no problem doing that. Talked about him being a really good double teamer and climbing off of that double team, getting to the second level. And as a puller, this guy, like I said, moves so gracefully that he gets out there, out in front of the play. He's not one of these lumbering linemen that you got to wait to get out and get that block. He goes out and finds that work and gets it and kicks that defender out of the way and allows that running back to quickly make a decisive cut and go much faster than slow. And finally, availability. He played in 35 out of 40 collegiate games, so it's a guy that is durable for the most part. Only missed one game in 2017. That was the season opener versus Wyoming. So there's a lot to like here with James Daniels. The only thing as we get to his cons that is a setback for me here with this guy is his anchor. Okay, I've got a number of notes here. Has to get a bit stronger and maybe even a bit bigger. I don't know if bigger is necessarily the case as much as stronger is, but he's got to be something better there in terms of his size or his strength. One or the other or both need to improve. I watched this guy get dump trucked versus Wisconsin, and I watched him in 3 games, all in 2017, versus Penn State, versus Ohio State, versus Wisconsin. He absolutely got dump trucked versus Wisconsin, leading to a sack. Literally, it was almost a safety. Luckily enough for him, the quarterback had the ball just outside of the goal line, but that defensive lineman literally picked him up, uprooted him, took him back about 5 yards, and sacked the quarterback. Can't happen at the next level. And then I have another note here, pushed all the way back to the QB before recovering versus Penn State. So he gave up a ton of ground. And, you know, some quarterbacks are uncomfortable. They're uneasy with that pocket collapsing like that in front of them, especially when out of your peripheral, you just see a guy getting moved 1 yard, 2 yards, 3 yards, and you feel it. You start to feel it. It can affect your comfort in the pocket. It could even affect the throw. So he ultimately arched that back and found a way to stop giving ground, but that's a little scary. And so he just needs to get stronger. But he's 20 years old. He's going to get stronger. He's going to get bigger. He's going to be a damn good pro. I'm convinced that in the second round, 39th overall selection, Iowa offensive lineman James Daniels is.
Hits right high. It's a deep. It is out of here.
This next one is probably my favorite of this entire draft, and I'm a little biased. I'm a receiver guy and by nature, and this is the guy that really tickled my fancy in this draft if you're talking receivers. And He wasn't the best in this draft class, but he was damn close. He was my second best receiver in this draft, and I think he's going to do wonders to help Mitchell Trubisky in Chicago. I think he'll be the perfect number 2 option after Allen Robinson. And if Cameron Meredith comes back healthy, he may actually only have to be the 3rd option, which is even better because I think this guy is going to do some serious damage in this league, whether from the slot or out wide. It doesn't make me one bit of difference. This guy has the tools to win, I think, in either situation. But maybe the slot is where his best work will be done at the next level. In any event, 2nd round, 51st overall selection, wide receiver out of Memphis, Anthony Miller is the selection. I've already broken down Anthony Miller, so I'm not going to do that here. But what I will tell you is that, like I said, he was my 2nd-rated receiver in this draft. This guy has phenomenal hands. He's a hell of a competitor. I just love what he brings to the table. He's a gamer. He's going to help elevate the level of play and competitive spirit on this football team. Not to say that they were lacking that in the past, but this is a guy that's going to come out and he's going to ignite a fire under the rest of this football team. And he's a guy that shows up ready to play every single day. And he's got a chip on his shoulder, and he plays as such. And I love what this guy brings to the table from a competitive standpoint, from an attacking the football standpoint, and just from a playmaking standpoint. That's what you got in these first 3 picks is playmakers. Even though James Daniels doesn't touch the football, he's a playmaker because he's going to help other guys make plays. And Anthony Miller is one of those guys that he's going to allow to make plays on his football team. Love this selection. Love the first 3 selections. And you'll be able to tell by this in the 2nd round, 51st overall selection, wide receiver out of Memphis. Anthony Miller is.
Hits right high. Hits it deep. It is out of here.
So this next pick is an interesting one because this guy can help. And I didn't know what I was getting into when I turned on the tape. I just said, let's see what this guy has. And I said, wow, a little light. Okay, a little lighter than you would like. But, man, does this guy make some things happen on the football field. And I don't know if I'm going to get his name right. I'm going to say it once, and then we're just going to call him J.I. for the rest of the time. But in any event, 4th round, 115th overall selection, linebacker out of Western Kentucky, Joel Iyiegbuniwe is the selection. So Joel Iyiegbuniwe stands 6'1", 229. And if you're 229, you better be able to run. This guy can run. So you feel good about that. 19 reps of 2 1/4. Missed the final 10 games of 2014 and then didn't miss a game thereafter. So he's had a clean bill of health since then. That's a good thing. 6.5 career sacks to go along with 5 career forced fumbles and 22.5 career tackles for loss. That's good production from the inside linebacker position. However, no INTs for which to speak of. That's a little disheartening, but we'll get to that a little bit later on. Let's talk about why I like this guy and what he brings to the table for this Bears football team. You start with his speed at 4.6 flat. That means he can pick him up and put him down, all right? And you see it on tape. This guy can move, especially when he gets out in space and is closing the distance between himself and a ball carrier, quarterback, whomever. But he closes the distance relatively quickly. Watched him in 2 games, in 2016 versus Alabama, in 2017 versus Middle Tennessee State. Both games he was outstanding in. I picked 2 really good ones to watch, to be honest with you, because he was outstanding in both of those games. Athleticism, acceleration, redirect. He's good to better than good at all of those things. So he's a standout in those areas. Awareness. I love the fact, and this is a guy that had over 100 tackles, 117 tackles in 2017. This is a guy that when he sees it, he goes, and he doesn't hesitate, and it allows him to make some things happen. But I will tell you this, he's very patient, almost to a fault at times. And sometimes patience can get you into trouble. It can get you blocked. But other times it allows you to see what's developing. And then if you've got the speed, you can then react. And he does that very well. Also, shed and slip blocks. Unlike some of the other linebackers inside I've seen throughout this draft in my film watching, this guy actually can shed a blocker and get off of a block and make a tackle. And that Middle Tennessee State game was thrilling in itself. Triple overtime. There's a play in overtime where he takes on a blocker, disengages, and makes a tackle for no gain in triple overtime. Those are the types of plays that's going to get this guy on the football field very fast in his NFL career. Just talked about him being able to take on blocks, not afraid of contact. Tackling ability, like I said, a $117 in terms of tackles in 2017, which is outstanding at any level, at any conference, at any school. I don't care where you are, that's a ton of production, to say the least. Zone coverage, let's talk about that a little bit later. Blitzing capabilities, I love that this guy can get after it as a blitzer. I told you 6.5 sacks. It's a good amount for a guy that's a junior. So you're talking about 2 sacks per year, essentially, from the inside linebacker position. That's nothing to scoff at. And range, he's got really solid range. It allows him to close ground quickly. It's not quite sideline to sideline speed, but it's close enough. And so he gets the job done there. You go to his cons, measurables. 6'1" isn't bad. I don't have a problem with that at all. It's the 229 that's a little, And again, I've said this a number of times. In today's NFL, you're not going to get killed for having a 229-pound linebacker on the football field. The problem there is if you're asking him to thump inside with some of these big nasties, 229 is a little light for that. But we've seen smaller guys like Telvin Smith, for example, do it. We've seen Dion Buchanan do it on a consistent basis in Arizona. So it can happen at a smaller weight. We'll see if he's going to stay that weight, put on some weight, or what the Bears will ask Iye Buniwe to do. You move on to the next con. Man coverage ability, I didn't even grade him on that. I never saw this guy in man-to-man coverage. He was either in zone or he was blitzing, but rarely did you see this guy chasing someone in man-to-man coverage. So I don't even know if he's capable of doing that, which is part of the reason this guy has no INTs. He's not in coverage a ton, and when he is, he's in zone. And you think that if you're as active as Joel is, that he'd just be around the football, it'd get deflected, and he'd have at least one INT to his name, but that is not the case at all. So that's Joel Iye Buniwe in a nutshell, man. I like this guy. I like his athleticism, and I see what the Bears are trying to do. They're trying to get faster. They're trying to get a little bit more aggressive up front defensively, and that's what this league is. You look at Jacksonville. You look at these defenses you look at the Falcons. You look at the Rams. You look at these defenses that have been successful over the last few years, and they have one common thread. They're fast. They're physical. They flow to the football. The Bears are trying to get that, and looking at this selection here of Iye Buniwe and looking at what they did with Roquan Smith, and you're adding them to the mix in Chicago with Gumby already there. This defense has a chance to really morph into something if they can put it all together. And I think they've got the right guy orchestrating it in Vic Fangio. I'm excited to see how this goes. In the 4th round, 115th overall selection, linebacker out of Western Kentucky, Joel Iye Buniwe is. So we go from that selection to another selection on the defensive side of the football. 5th round, 145th overall selection. Defensive lineman out of Delaware, Belial Nichols is the selection. 6'4", 306 pounds, stands Belial Nichols. 33-inch arms, 29 reps of 2 1/4. This guy has an impressive resume. 17 and a half tackles for loss, 6 and a half of which came in 2017. 9 and a half career sacks, 5 and a half of which came in 2017, a career high for him. So the best of what he was able to produce came in his final year at Delaware. That's what you're looking for, a guy on the ascension when you snag him. 4 forced fumbles, 2 INTs. Again, we're talking about a 306-pound defensive lineman with 2 career INTs, one of which came in 2017. And 15, yes, count them, 15 PBUs. 9, count them, 9 of which came in 2017. So active hands. If I'm not getting to the quarterback, I can still impact this play by getting my hands up in the passing lane and seeing if I can't get my hands on the football. And that's how you end up with an INT or 2 throughout your career, by being active and getting your hands up in the passing lane. And the reason why this guy is so intriguing is because he's an ex-basketball player and tight end in high school. So this guy has some athleticism, which we're about to get into right now, starting with his measurables. 6'4", 306 with 33-inch arms. Great size for an interior defensive lineman. And this guy played in a 3-4 base defense at Delaware. So he was the nose, essentially, which you got to love, because the Bears, I don't know if they're going to stick with that 3-4 defensive scheme and setup, but that's what Vic Fangio has done throughout his career. I'd assume they'll continue to do that. And if that is in fact the case, this guy is tailor-made for that type of defensive setup. He can also play in a base 4-3 defense and an even front as well. So it doesn't matter, odd, even, this guy is going to be a really good defensive lineman. But athleticism, this guy's ran a 4.95 40, which is outstanding for a 6'4", 306-pound defensive lineman. Hand usage, he uses his hands well, especially in getting guys to stalemate at the point of attack in terms of double teams trying to move him. He's got this bench press where he just literally, awareness is solid. Point of attack physicality, to me, is his best attribute right now. His leverage is outstanding. I don't know if I've ever seen a guy this tall, maybe Calais Campbell, who's 6'7", 6'8". Generally, guys really tall don't have great leverage. You can move those guys because you can get up under their pads and win the leverage battle. But this guy's 6'4", and you can't move him. He's like a wall. I literally watched teams double team. This guy consistently was double and triple teamed this year. I watched him in 3 games in 2017 versus Delaware State, versus Albany, and versus Virginia Tech. Virginia Tech, first game of the season, must have got the memo. They were double teaming this guy. They could not move him. I watched him, and I didn't expect Albany or Delaware State to move this guy. They put 2 and 3 defenders on him. Could not move this guy off the spot. It was like running into a brick wall. I was just floored at just how well he was able to dig his heels into the ground, get leverage, and just be unmoved in the middle of the defense. His ability versus the run is outstanding. Pass rush ability, I told you, 5.5 sacks, and some of these sacks came off a double team. Against Albany, I watched him split a double team and get to the quarterback, man. I mean, the guy has a little juice to him, even as a pass rusher. Tackling ability, when he gets his hands on guys, generally they go down. Where his presence is really felt, though, is when guys try to run in his gap, it's just not happening. It's just not happening. Good motor and endurance, and his impact on the game is outstanding. I talked about the different ways he impacts the game, whether it's tackle for a loss, standing his ground in the run game, getting to the quarterback or applying pressure or collapsing the pocket. 4 forced fumbles in his career, 15 PBUs, 9 of which came in 2017, and an interception. The guy's impacting the football game. So there's so much to like here with Belial Nichols. You go from his pros to his cons. Not much here to really speak of other than redirect. And at times when he's blocked, he's blocked. You know, as a pass rusher, you can tell sometimes he's tired. You don't get much. If he gets double teamed, he just says, okay, you got me. And kind of just stays there. And that's the only complaint I would have is that him as a twister and a stunter, he's not the best at that. But sometimes he can get tired, and when he's tired, you're not getting everything he's got in the gas tank. But I'm intrigued by this selection. Obviously, the small school thing is something that you got to take into consideration, and I did. And I want to see more production from a sack standpoint, but I was really impressed, man. I went back and forth as to whether a triple or a double would suffice. I probably was a little too cautious on this one. I was really feeling triple, but in the 5th round, 145th overall selection, defensive lineman out of Delaware, Belial Nichols, for me is sixth round, 181st pick overall, edge rusher out of Utah, Kylie Fitz is the selection. (6'4", 263) stands Kylie Fitz, and I was excited the first tape I put on of this guy, man. He blew me away versus BYU. I watched him in 4 games. BYU in both 2015 and 2017, and then Arizona and West Virginia also in 2017. But the first game I watched him in was BYU in 2017, not 2015. And he was a menace in that game. I literally counted him for 7 pressures, 3 quarterback hits, 1 forced INT in that game. I just thought he was exceptional. It really gave that right tackle Fitz. Then I watched all the rest of the games, and I soured on him more and more as I continued to watch. And so I don't really know what to make of Kylie Fitz, to be honest with you. I love his size, and I love some of what he brings to the table, but this guy can absolutely disappear in a game. There were games where I watched him where I didn't even realize he was on the field. 31 reps of 2 1/4, 11.5 career sacks, 5 forced fumbles. Foot injury cost him all but 2 games in 2016. Various ailments cost him 3 more games in 2017. So you're dealing with a guy with an extensive injury history, which reminds me, and I think, and this is what I put down in my notes, he reminds me of a less dynamic Haiole Kikaha coming out of UW about 3 years ago. Now, the big difference there was Kikaha was extremely productive, set the Washington record for most sacks in school history. That's not what Kylie Fitz is doing here at Utah. So he's much, much, much less dynamic than Haiole Kikaha. But he reminds me of Kikaha because of the way he plays. His size, Kikaha was a lot lighter than he was, a little bit more spry, able to get up the field and be more of a havoc wreaker. But Kikaha dealt with a number of injuries in college as well, which also followed him to the NFL, where he's dealt with some injuries early in his career. So I'm hoping that's not the same case for Kylie Fitz. But in any event, he's going to have to be a lot better if he even wants to crack this Bears roster to begin with. Let's go through his pros quickly. Measurables, 6'4", 263. That's outstanding for an edge rusher in a 3-4 defense. He can even stick his hand in the dirt if you wanted him to in some even fronts, in some nickel situations when you're looking for a pass rusher if he were to make this roster. Athleticism, 4'6'9". That's not bad. It's not great, but it's not terrible. Explosiveness. At times, he can get off the football. I thought against BYU in 2017, he was outstanding off that edge. But against more athletically gifted tackles that can move and get out of their stance, I don't know if he's going to be able to win that battle as a speed guy up the field very often. redirect. He can change directions on some stunts and twists and things of that nature. Pass rushing ability, he's got a little something to him. It's just inconsistent. Motor and endurance, for the most part, he's a try-hard guy. He'll give you what he's got. I did catch him loafing on the backside of some plays at times, which is a little off-putting, but nonetheless, impact on the game. I talked about that BYU game, but that was the best game that I saw him in. You really didn't get any huge games where he was a huge menace in, but he's not good enough to loaf on the backside of plays. He's not good enough to do that. So he's going to have to be better at the next level if he wants to make this football team, to be honest with you. You go from those pros to his cons. Hand usage, awareness. For a guy that's 263 pounds, he didn't set a physical enough edge to me. Not a difference-making edge, at least. Ability versus the run. Again, I know guys I've seen guys that are 245 pounds, damn near 20 pounds lighter, set a much more physical and aggressive edge than Kylie Fitz does. Tackling ability is average at best. Coverage skills, mediocre. And PRP, I don't think it really exists with him. He's got two moves, really, that he goes to. Speed up the field and then bull rush. And I saw him try a spin once, and then he actually got a sack off of it where he rushed up the field, then spun back up the field, but the spin was only predicated by the quarterback getting out of the pocket and him realizing that the quarterback was getting out of the pocket and him then doubling back and spinning into the quarterback and getting the sack. He would not have spun had the quarterback remained in the pocket. So I don't even think that he thought about spinning until the quarterback kind of necessitated him to put a spin on there. So I don't even want to give him credit for using this spin move as if that's something that he can actually think of himself and do without the quarterback necessitating a spin. So in any event, this was really frustrating watching him, because after watching the first game, I thought maybe they got a steal. Maybe they got a gem because he was injured and had some injury history that wasn't as pleasant. Maybe teams slept on this guy. You may have been able to unearth a gem. And ultimately, you may still be able to do that here. I could be wrong. I've been wrong in the past. It wouldn't be the first time, won't be the last. But after that BYU game in 2017, it just all went downhill for me after that. And I soured on him to the point that in the 6th round, 181st overall selection, Utah edge rusher Kylie Fitz for me is So the Bears wrap up their 2018 NFL draft with more help from Mitchell Trubisky. Don't you just love when a team goes all in for a young quarterback, gets them all the weaponry they could ask for, and gives them a chance to succeed? That's what the Bears are doing here, even in the 7th round with a guy that I think is going to make this roster. 7th round, 224th overall selection, wide receiver out of Georgia, Javon Wims is the selection. So I've got a love-hate relationship with Javon Wims. I love this guy because of his size and what he brings to the table. I hate some of the things that I saw on tape, and he's going to have to clean it up, if he wants to make this roster as a 7th-round pick. And now that this team isn't destitute at the receiver position like they were last year, if they're able to stay healthy, you get Kevin White back again and again. I know I don't really want to talk about that. If you're a Bears fan, you don't care to hear his name. But if he's able to stay healthy, obviously Allen Robinson's able to stay healthy. Obviously, if Cameron Meredith's able to stay healthy. Obviously, if Anthony Miller's able to stay healthy. Obviously, you went out and signed Taylor Gabriel. That's 5 receivers right there. Is there space for Javon Wims? I don't know. But you can't deny 6'3", 215. You just can't. And the guy can run. The guy can catch. The guy can make plays. There's a place on an NFL roster somewhere for Javon Wims if he can be more consistent. This guy's a JUCO transfer, 2 years at Georgia. Not heavy production in those 2 years. Last year was his best year, which is what you want to see. 45 catches, 720 yards, and 7 touchdowns last year. 61 catches, 912 yards, 8 touchdowns overall for him in 2 years at Georgia. Ex-basketball player, so the running, the jumping, all of that stuff, it's fluid. And you see that in the athleticism, and you see it show up on the football field. There are some problems that arise with some of that stuff, and we'll get to it. But I watched him in 3 games against Mizzou, Auburn, and Oklahoma, all in 2017. And you can throw Alabama in there, as I watched him in that game as well. So, measurables, 6'3", 215. You got to love that. Got to love that kind of size in this league. And he can run. 4.53, 40 at that size is tremendous. Hands. There are a number of drops on tape that make me uncomfortable. His hands are not a negative, but they're not the type of positive that gets you excited, okay? For every big-time catch, and he has a catch versus Oklahoma where he stretches away from his frame, makes a great catch over by the sidelines. For every one of those, there's a concentration lapse dropped. Or my biggest pet peeve with him, my worst problem here with Javon Wims is the contested ball catch, or lack thereof. Anytime he's got anybody draped all over him, it's a drop. He's got to go up, climb the ladder, use that athleticism that I referenced. It's a drop. We'll talk about that a little bit later, but there's a catch against Oklahoma in the back of the end zone as Georgia takes the lead for the first time in the game, 38-31. That is so scintillating that it made the hairs on my neck stand up. And I said, wow. Because he had disappointed me so much up until that point in terms of contested catches. And on this particular catch, he says, I can catch the football in tight window contested situations. Let me show you. And that catch proved to me that he can. He just doesn't do it enough, especially when he has to leave his feet and go into the air. A lot of drops in those situations. But that catch in the back of the end zone with a cornerback draped all over your back, stretched out arms as far as they can go, go gadget arms. Football is clutched in his hands, outstretched. Hands have to be strong because you can't pull it into your body. Impact upon ground, ball doesn't move, has football stretched out. That's impressive, man. So I know he's capable. Quickness and suddenness. He actually runs some really good routes for a big man. Gets in and out of breaks. Comes back to the football. Good acceleration. Saw him run by some guys, some underthrown footballs at times. Forced him to have to go up, climb the ladder, and not come down with the football. But I watched him against Auburn win in the slot. Just beat a guy. Watched him against Oklahoma win in the slot. Underthrown football, has to leave his feet, doesn't catch it. Route running, I put down in my notes, pretty good route runner, man. I was really impressed. Usually these 6'3" guys aren't the sharpest route runners. They like to round things off. He's pretty sharp, man. Physicality, toughness, he has all of those things. Run after the catch, actually pleasantly surprised with this guy after the catch. Versus Auburn, he catches a little hitch, turns to the outside shoulder. Should have only gotten 8 yards on the play, ends up getting 16. Had a catch against Oklahoma early in that football game. 5-yard hitch, turns it into an 11-yard gain. He's capable. He can make some plays after the catch. Leaping ability, high point in the football. It barely made it into the positives because I said he can jump, but he doesn't come down with balls in contested situations when he jumps. So it's a gift and a curse. Yeah, he can jump, and you want that with a 6'3" frame, and I think you'd be better served throwing it up where he's got to actually extend from his frame, away from his frame with his hands, then jump up into the air and then have to catch it with his body, because when he does that, he just doesn't catch the football. Catch radius, I have on an over route versus Oklahoma, which I referenced earlier when I said he's got hands. On a deep over route towards the sidelines, he had to stretch away from his frame and catch the football, and he did. So that just goes to show you the 6'3" frame with the long arms. There's a nice size radius there if you're a quarterback that makes you smile. Ball tracking ability, he can track the football when it's in the air. This guy, though, blocks his ass off as a receiver, or one that is hard on the receivers. Excuse me, and a receiver enthusiast. Excuse me. The mantra has always been, if you want to eat, then you got to work for your food. You gotta work. You want to eat? You gotta like those people you see outside with signs that say "We'll work for food." You gotta go block in the run game. You want to eat? You better go block, man. Go get somebody's ass in the run game, and we will feed you. You will get yours. We will throw you a bone if you block it in the run game. This guy blocks his ass off, man. If nothing else, he can make this team off of some of his exploits as a receiver, but you need guys that can block in the run game. Javon Wims will do that. He'll come down and dig a safety out. Crack motion, he'll come down and ear hole a linebacker. Sideline awareness is solid as well. So those are all his pros. You go to his cons. I don't know if I can trust this guy on 3rd and 7. I think you can. I would go to so many other guys before I got to Javon Wims. And even at Georgia, I think they trusted Godwin more than they trusted him. In crucial situations, they threw the football to Terry Godwin. So I think even Georgia realized every now and again out of Javon's, you're going to get a drop. I'd hate for it to be 3rd and 6 in a crucial situation. So versatility, I don't know if he can play anywhere but out wide. I saw him win in the slot, and I told you he's a really good route runner, but you can find quicker, faster, more dependable hands in the slot than Javon Wims. So right now I just see a guy that can only help you on the outside. So we'll see. And in production, only one true year of production, and that was in 2017. And again, it wasn't knock your socks off production. 45 catches, 720 yards, 7 touchdowns. That's good numbers, but for most people, for most really good receiver, and again, it's Georgia, they're just figuring out their quarterback situation. That's solid production, but it's just 1 year of it. So take it for what it's worth. But I like Javon Wims, man. I don't know. I just told you how stacked. All of a sudden, the Chicago Bears are loaded at receiver. I don't know if Javon Wims makes this roster or not, but I like him a lot. Practice squad could be something that might suit him. I'm going to tell you what, man. It wouldn't shock me if this guy went out bald in the preseason, and if you couldn't hold on to him, someone else snatches him up. This kind of size in this frame with the kind of things he brings to the table, he's going to be on an NFL roster. If not in Chicago, somewhere. He will be in the NFL. But in the 7th round, 224th pick, Georgia wide receiver Javon Wims is. So that is the Chicago Bears 2018 NFL Draft in a nutshell. Hell of a job done by GM Ryan Pace. Got to give him credit where credit is due. This was an outstanding draft. It wouldn't shock me if every one of these players made the roster, if 6 out of the 7 made the roster. I can't see any less than 5 of these guys making the roster, honestly speaking. And with that being said, let's get to the scoring here, because this is going to be one of the better drafts you're going to find in terms of score in the 2018 NFL Draft Wrap-Up Series here on the Louie Tee Network. It is so rare that a team starts out with back-to-back-to-back jacks in a draft, but that's exactly what the Chicago Bears did, going deep, not once, not twice, but 3 times early in this draft, getting good after good after good football players to start this draft off. Hell, possibly great. We'll see what happens and what's in store for these players, but even a guy like Joel Iye Buniwe is a guy that I like. Even Belial Nichols is a guy that I think can help. And I think Javon Wims is a good football player. We'll see what happens with this Bears draft, but this was impressive, and they're heading in the right direction. Mitchell Trubisky has a wealth of resources and riches at the skill positions now. The only question is, can they put it together? Can they stay healthy up front along the offensive line? You add James Daniels to that mix. They can get Kyle Long to finally stay healthy. You've got some things out there, Leno Jr. and Cody Whitehair. You add James Daniels. You get a healthy Kyle Long, and all of a sudden, that could be one of the better offensive lines. You know what you have at the running back position. You add in tight end, and you look at the receiver position, and it's loaded now. You've got speed. Guys can take the top off the defense. Guys that can work the short to intermediate. It's an intriguing football team, and you've gotten better on defense with this draft as well. I'm anxious to see what the Bears look like and how competitive they're going to be in 2018. New head coach, new direction, new players. We'll see what happens with this Bears football team. But I'm your man, Louie Tee. Thank you for joining me. Remember, we're changing the game one video at a time. Make sure you follow me on Twitter. Subscribe to this channel, Louie Tee Network. Make sure you check out the site, LouieTeeNetwork.net. Follow my podcast and go ahead and download that, the Louie Tee Network podcast. And if you can support the movement, please do so via Patreon or PayPal. Everything, all of the ways you can follow me, find me, support me, down in the description below. I'm your man, Louie Tee. Got plenty more of these to come, so don't you go anywhere. Signing off. See you next time. Have a good one.